February the 21st, 1990, I accompanied a crew from Nippon Television Network to witness a test flight of an object over Groom Lake, which is known as Area 51. We arrived at the site around just after sundown because, according to the information given to us on that same day when we visited Mr. Lazar at his residence, he said that if you go there after sundown and stand near the mailbox area of Highway 375, looking south towards Groom Mountains and also to the Jumble Hills, you will see test flight of these objects. And lo and behold, when we arrived at the scene, exactly around 6:45 or so, we started seeing, we suddenly started seeing an orangish, yellowish light suddenly appear on top of Jumbled Hills, making a motion to the right for about 15 seconds or so. Next, exactly at 8:15 p.m., we had another sighting of the same object that suddenly appeared on top of Jumbled Hills, came up above the hills, and made its appearance, went slightly to the right side, and at that juncture in time, it made a sudden descension and a back turn, which I estimated to be possibly about 5,000 feet sudden descension, a back turn descension. And I had never seen anything like that in my life ever, and it is definitely a test flight of highly unusual object, a demonstration of technology, a propulsion system so exotic right now that we don't know what it was, but it was being tested at that very night.
I said, why at sunset? And he said, well, statistically, up in that area, there's the least traffic around then. So I drove with Bob and the real estate appraiser, Gene Huff, and myself, and we drove up there, got there just a little bit before sunset. I took my Celestron telescope, we took a video camera, got out of the car, and within maybe 10 or 15 minutes, this disc comes up from behind the mountains and starts doing all these fantastic maneuvers. It was a light, a very bright light, and you couldn't see the disc form. But I had my Celestron scope with me, which is 8 inches, extremely powerful, and after a few minutes I was able to get it right in the finder of the Celestron telescope, and I saw for myself it was a disc. There was no question in my mind, and I just watched it go down behind the mountains.
I was traveling in a car with my friend down the road, and a very large object flashed over the car and then began to float probably about a mile away from us in the open desert. We got out of the car, ran towards the object, and got within a few hundred yards of a large disc-shaped object about 40 feet in diameter that looked like a saucer with a teacup on the top of it. It glowed a brilliant reddish-orange color and then glowed a real bright yellow color. On one occasion we thought that the object was actually going to explode because it glowed so brilliantly. It would shoot up to about 200 feet in the air, make a falling leaf motion back and forth, and then go back down onto the ground. This object was amazing. I was so excited because I've never seen anything before like this ever in my life. We got our faces burned. We had a mild case of radiation poisoning after that. We had fevers for 3 or 4 days of about 102, 103 degrees, which we felt was radiation poisoning. And since then I've been out to the Area 51 area probably some 40, 50 times or so, and have taken quite literally hundreds of people out there.
We saw 6 craft that night, each one in succession. And it was craft number about 2 or 3 that was the most dramatic. That is, it was the one that came the closest, and I took a photograph of it. What we actually saw, Michael, was a craft that was ellipsoidal in shape. It was pulsating brightly, and while we couldn't see the outline of the craft, the strict outline, we saw this very brightly pulsating ellipsoid. And when I snapped some shots, apparently the camera, with its low-end optics, that is, we didn't have a huge magnifying lens, so it didn't bring the craft in so close that it would have appeared as a giant blur of light. So, plus, it must have caught the craft in a trough of its pulse, because the photograph captured the craft beautifully. That is the outline of it. So it was just a fluke of being at the right place at the right time and having the right optical setup.
What's going on in Area 51 today, based on information from first-person interviews I've made over the last 6 or 7 years, there are at least 8 black programs flying out of Groom Lake, out of Area 51. That does not count the B-2 bomber, because it's not a black program. It does not count the F-117, which is virtually a white program today. There are at least 2 very, very high-speed aircraft that have been reported since 1982 is when we've heard the first reports of them. One of them is a small aircraft. It goes approximately Mach 4 to Mach 6. There's an aircraft that has been tracked out of the Bay Area TRACON in Oakland, California, by the Federal Aviation Administration Center at least 8 times since 1986, flying in excess of 10,000 miles an hour going through controlled airspace, and a very, very large aircraft at that. Besides the 2 high-speed aircraft, there is a stealth or low observable electronic warfare aircraft. It's been referred to as Excalibur. There is an aircraft that is designed to fly very, very high, but very, very slow and very, very quiet. There's been some rumblings or reports as a flying triangle, much like the canceled McDonnell Douglas General Dynamics A-12 that was going to be an attack aircraft. Just recently, out of Lancaster, California, taken off from Palmdale, which is Air Force Plant 42, and that's where the B-1 was built. The B-2 bomber is being built there. The F-117 is being serviced there in the U-2 operations. There has been at least 3 sightings of triangular-shaped aircraft being launched out of that area. They made no noise, and the people just happened to look up and see these things leaving the area at relatively low altitude, but again, no noise.
Are there any unconventional technologies, propulsion technologies involved?
Yes, I have had the opportunity over the years to interview, again, people who have worked at the test site at Groom Lake. One gentleman spent 12 of his 30 years in black programs at Groom Lake. When I asked him, I said, first of all, I said, do you believe in UFOs? And he looked at me with a straight face in one-on-one, and he said, absolutely, positively, they do exist. I said, can you expand upon that? And he said, no, I can't. About a year later, we were talking about, again, activities at Groom Lake. And I asked him, I said, you know, can you really tell me what's happening out there? And he said, well, there's a lot of things that are going on there that I won't be able to tell you until the year 2025. But we have things in the Nevada desert that would make George Lucas envious. Another individual who was an NCO, an E9, which is the highest grade you can get as an enlisted man. He's a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. Was a safety specialist. He had 3 different tours of duty at Groom Lake on various programs. Now, he had no connection with my friend who worked on the other black programs. We were talking, I interviewed him at Nellis in 1985, 86 time frame. And I said, what's out there? And again, he looked me straight in the eye and he said, we have things out there that are literally out of this world. I said, explain. He said, I can't. But trust me. See, we have things that are better than Star Trek, better than anything you can see in the movies. He said, are they airplanes? And he said, I can't comment.
There are 4 aerospace covert facilities. This is what we call the aerospace connection in the Antelope Valley and also the San Joaquin Valley. Rockwell in the San Joaquin, Lockheed, McDonnell Douglas, and Northrop in the Antelope Valleys. And these operations are extremely suspicious. They have a surface cover activity. They call themselves RCS testing sites. That stands for radar cross-section. And apparently their presumed purpose is to test various aeroform designs atop pylons with radar cross-section. And the disturbing part is that we have found out with incontrovertible proof that there are extensive underground facilities. And for example, Northrop we have documented to have 42 levels underground. Now if this is radar cross-section testing, which is above ground, why do they need 42 levels underground? Also, at the Lockheed facility out in Helendale, we had an investigative reporter who saw a blueprint of the building plans for that facility that he wasn't supposed to see. It showed that they had an extensive underground facility 300 feet down. And when this reporter interviewed the person who was in charge of that facility, they had a nice, pleasant interview until at the end he told the director that he was aware of this extensive underground facility. And what could he tell him about that? And immediately the man's eyes grew wide and he said, "This interview is terminated." So it's very suspicious. And then, of course, we have other reports of people in the area who say that they have seen alien craft emanating from these facilities and terminating at these facilities.
Area 51 has 3 tiers of security systems. The outer perimeter security, the inner security, and also the regular military security, plus automated security system. We're talking about outer perimeter security. Area 51 is using semi-private security firms such as Wackenhut Corporation. We call them Wackenhut SS because basically it's the way they operate. Wackenhut SS, of course, means Wackenhut Special Securities Corporation, of course, and they are assigned to guard the outer perimeters of Area 51. And they, because of the status of being a semi-private status, they don't wear any insignias of any kind. They wear military camouflage uniforms and carry machine guns and so on. They ride unmarked four-wheel blazer type vehicles, and they harass citizens who even dare to drive on any of these dirt roads south of the Highway 375. We have every right to be driving on these public lands as long as we don't cross the warning sign area. We were harassed by dangerously maneuvering helicopter over public land on May 16, 1991. A group of us, altogether 18 of us, were in a 7-car caravan just coming back on Groom Road after taking pictures of the warning sign area. We were coming back to Highway 375. But suddenly we heard a thunderous sound overhead, as if a railroad was passing over our cars. When we looked up, there was this military helicopter that appeared and came about 5 to 8 feet above our cars on purpose, harassing us, intimidating us, and for the next 15 to 16 minutes we were trying to get away from this helicopter. We were frantically trying to drive and go away from this area, and we were buzzed by this helicopter continuously for 15 minutes. In one occasion, this helicopter circled around as we were driving and came front of our cars at almost low level and just scared us and continued this illegal maneuvering, endangering our lives.
Where is it? Where is it? There it is.
Jeez. How can you see anything with it?
It went behind the mountain. There it is. There it is.
That's flying over there.
I see one.
Huh?
I see one.
Yeah, it's test flying. It's going to continue for the next stop.
Right there it is. See it?
Yeah, it's flying over there.
Yeah, it's moving back and forth.
Take a look at here. Yeah, take a look at it. It's a light. See, when I see it, it's dark brown.
It's hovering over there.
I had to put the gain on just to see it. Boy, my battery.
Yeah, right.
Fortunately, this isn't doing me any good.
Yeah.
I think so.
I got it, okay.
Now it's gone.
flares, aerial maneuvers, or test flights of extraterrestrial spacecraft? One thing is sure. Their flight characteristics were more than unconventional. Our eyewitnesses were convinced.
I saw, well, right over the horizon there, as most of us said so far, I saw a light come up over the horizon, probably a few degrees over the horizon, and it broke into first 2 lights, then 3 lights, and then it seemed to string them all together, kind of like a string of pearls or beads. And there seemed to be a connection as the light jumped from one position to the next, and it was kind of an orange-yellow color, and it seemed to be sort of swirling around at the same time. It wasn't a straight directional thing. It's kind of like they were going like this.
What was that they saw in the skies above Nevada? We'll try and have some answers next. A big UFO convention came to an end in Las Vegas last night, and afterwards, naturally, some of the members went out in the desert to search for UFOs. A news crew went along, too, and sure enough, it wasn't long before a mysterious, unidentified object appeared. Not too surprising, somewhere up there, you see it, because this patch of desert is right near a military test site. This looked like no aircraft lights that any of these folks had ever seen.
This was a bona fide UFO sighting?
I think it was, yeah.
And UFO means unknown flying object, and this definitely was nothing I've ever seen before.
Was it a bird? Was it a plane? Was it the Aurora, the secret plane? We don't know. More to come, I'm sure, and the Air Force is not saying anything as usual.
Oh, fascinating. You have a good weekend, of course, all of you. Good night, everybody.